Hello everybody, this is Berry here and welcome to another My Autism Diaries video. I was going to do this as a separate video about depression, but then I thought, well, depression and autism can go hand in hand, so I thought I'd amalgamate my next proposed video in this one. First and foremost, autism is a neurological condition, not psychological, but it can take its toll on the mental health of the person whom it is affecting. Depression is to do with brain chemistry, and it isn't just a simple feeling sad, and sometimes people have described it as feeling completely numb. I had cognitive behavioral therapy 18 months ago. At the time I thought this therapy did good for me, but in retrospect it kind of didn't. The therapist and I first of all spoke about coping with being an autistic person in a neurotypical world, and how I could train myself not to get too stressed out and bogged down with it and be able to cope with being different. It then became how to combat depression. I was told to think of depression as a completely different entity to myself, not part of myself, but almost like it's an invasive presence in my brain telling me things and I shouldn't listen to it. I was told I had to push it away, that I had to learn to keep it in a confined space, to build a buffer against it so it couldn't get to me. And that seemed like a really, really good idea. We actually spoke about J.K. Rowling and about how she manifested her depression through the Dementors in the books. And we spoke about that, and then I mentioned that I had a Dementor pop figure on my desk at work, and she said to me, well, think of your depression as that. Think of it as a small little thing that is there, but you don't need to focus on it, that you can focus on other things around you. And it's true, I have some little figures on my desk, and I don't look at them and think about them and concentrate on them during my work. They're just there, and I can get on with my day, and it seemed like a pretty good metaphor. However, last April I was signed off for stress. I could feel it building over a few months, and I thought I was then after that able to cope with it. But, and again, it's sometimes you only see something looking back, but looking back, the stress was still there. I likened it a little bit to Hodor when he's holding the door, and the pressure builds up, and the stress on the door was the stress that I started to feel accumulate once again, and culminated in me being signed off work for 3 weeks a couple of months ago. And it was only when I was on the phone to a counsellor that I realised that it was actually depression building back up again. I was pushing it away, I wasn't minimising it, I was compartmentalising it, but it was building strength. And at the point that I spoke to her, that was the moment that the door broke, the pressure broke, and it invaded my mind again. That was on a Friday. The following Monday, I went to the doctor's. I got a very early appointment. I told my boss that I'd be in. I got ready for work. I got my work clothes on and everything. Went in, and he said to me that he was not very happy with how I'd previously been treated for depression. I told him what had been discussed in cognitive behavioral therapy, and he said that isn't really right because you're not treating the root cause. You're not really going there. You need counselling, but you also need medication. You can't just have one or the other. You have to have the two together. And a few years ago I was put on citalopram, just 10 mils, and he said 10 mils will do nothing. 10 mils will... it's more of a placebo. And I didn't have that much counselling at the time, and he said to me, you're going to have counselling. So I've arranged that privately, and I'm now on 50 milligrams of sertraline. Sertraline takes about 4 to 6 weeks apparently to really kick in, and it did kick in, and it was very sudden. Just suddenly one day on a Monday I just felt a and it was nice to feel that after a long time of constantly being up here. I just felt a lull, and I found myself sort of feeling a lot better on this medication, and I've been on it ever since. And I think I have to accept the fact that I'm going to need mental health support for the rest of my life. I mean, there's the autism, there's also the effect of having this gene, And sometimes any hormonal problems that may come along with this gene can also cause depression. So it could be a physical reason as well. So I'm now being looked after and I'm having counselling now. There are things that I haven't spoken about in these vlogs because they're very private. So many childhood memories have come up. Issues with people I haven't even thought about for years have come up. And looking back on past familial relationships, how I feel about them and what impact they're having on my life now. It's really coming back to the surface, and I think I'm going to need quite a bit of help with it. I'm part of this whole letting my feelings out I will be doing on my vlogs, but of course there are certain things that for other people's confidentiality and certain things I think should be kept private I won't be mentioning. So with autism is, I suppose the toll with autism is that when your brain is wired in a different way to the rest of the world, such as, say for example, the autistic person is, I'm not going to say one is lesser than the other, just different. So an autistic person is an Xbox and everybody else is a PlayStation. You're very different. You can't be like the others. You can't run the same disks and software. Sometimes I've used this as a metaphor, and I used it in cognitive behavioural therapy. I think of non-autistic people as squares or boxes, and autistic people as triangles or pyramids. So an autistic person's shape is triangular because they tend to go very far in one direction, but other things, if you look at it, it's, if you think of like a pyramid, if you put it inside a box, it'll poke out the top, but there'll be negative spaces at the sides. So there are parts that they're not quite filled in on, but there are other parts where they excel. Non-autistic people are box-shaped or square themselves, so they fit in that box. And if you try and make the pyramid or the triangle fit inside that box, you're going to have to collapse it down. But it's never going to be box-shaped. It's never going to be a square. And sometimes I think the more you're forced to be someone you're not, you can't make an Xbox play PlayStation games and vice versa, the more it takes its toll on the mental health of that person. And what is really heartbreaking is that autism, the symptoms of autism, can sometimes just look like a child is unruly and undisciplined, and the parents, you know, can sometimes punish their children or sometimes feel that they failed as a parent. They feel like it's their fault their child turned out like this. The child is just naughty, or when the adult gets older, or they just were, you know, had bad parents. And a little while ago I was watching a video with autism, and there was somebody who was refuting everything about autism, saying autism doesn't exist and it's just bad parenting, your parents were just really, really bad. I'm like, dude, you know nothing about my life. Nothing. Absolutely none. And I had brothers and sisters who were brought up by the same person. I'm nothing like them because I just didn't get the whole neurotypical life. I really didn't. I didn't understand why people enjoyed things that I just didn't enjoy. I didn't understand why people didn't enjoy the things I enjoyed. It was really weird growing up in a world where I actually felt like a bit of an alien. And I was actually adopted, but it kind of felt like I had come from a completely different place and was put into a human suit and adopted by humans to act human and be human but not be human, and to be bollocked and told off for behaving in a way that I never intended. People always had the wrong idea about me and thought that I was being naughty and unruly when I really wasn't. such as certain particular people used to believe that I was blatantly ignoring my mother, whereas really I was just so absorbed in a particular subject that I was reading about or watching that I just could drown out everything. And if I did something, it's because I thought it was the right thing to do, and apparently it wasn't. I found it very difficult to identify with emotions that people might be feeling in certain situations. I still find that quite difficult. And quite a lot of the time, particularly with women on the spectrum, is we learn how to mask it by repeating what people say and repeating patterns of behaviour that we observe in other people because they look good at the time in a particular social situation, and we'll use that again in the future. That's called echolalia, where you literally parrot back what someone has said or reiterate something that you may have heard before. And sometimes I tried to sort of do what I'd seen people do on TV shows, and they never worked. It was never the right thing to say in a particular scenario, and I would say exactly what was on my mind without realising that it was wrong. If I found it funny, I used to think other people would, and I was so puzzled when they wouldn't think it was funny. How all this relates to depression is that when that happens, you constantly feel put down, and like your efforts to try and be nice to people and to try and do the right thing, you're treated not only like you're getting it wrong, but you're treated as if you're deliberately doing it wrong. You're called names, you're singled out, laughed at, not picked in teams. All of that really does take its toll, and it can affect the jobs that you do. I had a really bad time trying to get a job and keep a job. I was never actually sacked, but I had to leave several jobs in certain places because I just couldn't cope. And it kind of breaks my heart, especially when I see a video that the National Autistic Society did, a point of view of a child who was overwhelmed with lights and colours and sounds when he was out in the supermarket, that he had a breakdown, and the parents just thought this child was having a tantrum, and the looks that the mother got, and the little boy had his hands over his ears. He was clearly in pain and distressed. It was awful to watch. It really was. It was so real. So real. I suppose it builds up over a long period of time, and people with autism will at some point in their lives require some help and support with, maybe they might not suffer with depression per se, but they may need help with learning how to cope emotionally with living in the world. And it's not always easy because, I mean, everyone in a way, has to conform in order to fit into the world if that's what they want to do. But it's to hold that heavy mask in place is really exhausting quite a lot of the time, and that's why autistic burnout and meltdown happens, because you just can't do it anymore. Exhaustion is debilitating, and I think that's resulted in the breakdown of my mental health over the last few years. And I think when I was in my teens, from age 16 to 19, I was in pretty much the same place mentally, but I didn't seek help. My mother wanted me to. She really did, but I didn't seek help. I just decided, and I think if I look back at that time, I mean, I was struggling with a lot of things. I mean, I did a vlog a little while ago about the fact that I didn't want to leave school, and that really affected me for a long time. There were financial worries. Sexuality was also another thing I was struggling with. What I wanted to do after school, my college work, family life, everything was just all over the place. And looking back, I was actually self-medicating. I was constantly doing fad diets to lose weight. I would go through times where I'd binge and then I'd fast. I would over-exercise, and I exercised so much to the point that I ended up with tendonitis in my Achilles heels, so I had to stop. I wrote extensive diaries, really massive diaries. I spent the whole time just writing and writing and writing. I read a lot. I would go for long walks on my own. I would sing a lot. I went through a time where I was really singing a lot, and I was in a choir for a while, but I had a problem with pitch. So I wasn't that good at singing, but I did it a lot. These were all ways that I coped, that I let feelings out, and maybe I should have asked for help, but then I don't know what my life would have been like if I had got the help that I needed then, where I would be now. And I don't think it's a good idea to dwell on it. I don't think I would have been diagnosed with autism back then. I don't think I would have ever have been suspected of having autism, because it was never in my mind, not once until I reached my late 20s, that I ever suspected autism. I never thought my behaviour was due to my brain being wired differently. I don't like to call it a medical condition or even a condition, because it's not. It's simply just because autistic people are a minority, we're looked at the ones with something wrong with us, and the people who are neurotypical are the majority, so they're looked at as the ones that are normal. For all we know, it could be the other way round. It really is the right thing to ask for help if you're struggling, because there'll be like I've been told several times, you need to identify triggers of when you know things are building up, because the worst thing that can happen is it builds up and builds up and builds up, and suddenly bam, that's it, you need time off work, that's it, you're in a position where you really need serious help. It's best to nip it in the bud as soon as you possibly can, so that you can cope. I think if you're autistic and you have high functioning autism, because you appear to come across as, I don't like the word normal, but normal, you appear to not have any problems that would hinder you leading a normal life. You're expected to work and behave and pay taxes and do everything like everyone else should, so you don't get cut a lot of slack. Is that because you are required to play the part of neurotypical as much as you possibly can, that I think talking therapies and possibly even seeking help medically can really help those with autism that are living independently in the community. I can't function the same way a neurotypical does. Yeah, I'm expected to. You know, I still work, I still do things, I still do what I can. I still have to sort out things like insurance and make sure my car's all fine. I have to do a lot of adulting. It's just really exhausting. So I think I'm not going to be afraid now in the future of saying I'm going to need help, and I'm going to probably need to be on medication and have counselling for the rest of my life. I do hope that me sharing my stories and me telling you my experiences and what my views and feelings are might help you, because you might feel the same. I'm sorry if I don't have enough advice for people, but I'm not the best person to give advice, because I can only speak for myself. I would always suggest going to your GP, maybe contacting your local autistic trust or the National Autistic Society about help with mental health. And do you know what? I'll put the link to the National Autistic Society below. I'll see if I can find a link on their website for mental health if I can. But if you check that out, if you feel you need to, there is help out there, and there are many forums you can join where you can chat with people and meet with people wherever you are in the world. I really hope you're well and happy, and I'll see you in my next vlog or gaming video. Goodbye everybody, bye.